Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and with the international break being completed as of this morning, most of my players have survived. Well, I think all of them have survived. Uh, so I actually don't look like I have any forced transfers to make, which is great. Haaland is indeed flagged at the moment, but I suspect he'll probably be fine, as it was just a twisted ankle in the Norway match that he played, and he actually ended up playing out the rest of that fixture, in which he did pick up the injury, and so I doubt that this will actually keep him out of the Liverpool clash. And with the hectic Christmas period bearing down on us, we need to be prioritising nailed on assets, which is something that I talked about in my video at the start of the international break. And to just catch you all up to speed, especially if you're new to the channel, my proposed transfer back then was to go from Cash to Saliba, to dodge Cash's fixtures and to jump on Arsenal, which have one of the best defences and a pretty good run of fixtures coming up. However, as you can tell from the title, I have got some other options in mind, which I will discuss in this video. There is quite a lot to cover in this video because we will be going through some injuries and suspensions that have come up across the break. And so I'll actually be skipping over the FPLFanatic League this week. But very quickly, shout out to Charlie Seaver, who is still currently ranked top in the league, second week running. He came into the league 2 game weeks ago with a score of 79. He's currently ranked at 1,007th in the world right now, so absolutely solid effort, mate. 79 points and benched both Palmer and Tsimikas. Could have been a whole lot bigger, but Jesus, he is up there and cranking it. So if you are interested in joining this league, there is a link in the description below. I'm currently coming 22nd in the league at the moment, and I'm currently ranked in the top 52k overall. So it is a pretty competitive league, to say the least. Entries are still open, and will be remaining open until game week 19. So I think once game week 19 is done, as soon as the deadline switches over for game week 20, I will be closing down entrance to the league at this point. But quite a lot of these managers, well, a few of these managers that are up in the top echelons of the world do actually comment on some of the videos, and so if you do join the league, you will be able to obviously jump into some of these guys' teams to see what they're doing, where they're ranked in the world, if those comments are at all of relevance to your team. But before we get started, if you're not already a subscriber to this channel, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out. And if you enjoy the following content, make sure to give it a thumbs up. So the first thing that we will go over is the injuries and suspensions that are currently floating around. This will not be a complete list of all that are injured and all that are suspended. I've just kind of whittled the list down to some players and teams for which I think they are of relevance, mostly to my team, but to quite a lot of highly owned players and teams. So as I mentioned in the intro, Haaland will probably be fit for the Liverpool clash this weekend. A rolled ankle in which that he played the rest of the Norway fixture through shouldn't keep him out for a very important clash with Liverpool at the weekend. Matoma from Brighton is likely going to miss the Forest fixture. And the reason this is important is I suspect that a lot of Matoma owners will probably look at someone like Mbumo as their most likely replacement for Matoma. There are some other options, obviously. They could also drop down to a Cole Palmer if they do not already own Cole Palmer, and with Chelsea's fixtures, I mean, they've got a tough game this week away to Newcastle, and then they've got Brighton at home, which isn't too bad, and then United away, which also isn't too bad, and then a great run of fixtures coming up. So Cole Palmer will also be in the mixer, but it is important to discuss it because obviously people without Matoma won't actually know that he is in fact injured, and that the ownership of players like Palmer and Mbumo will probably be increasing for game week 13. Bowen is also currently flagged and was ruled out of England's match against North Macedonia. Now, I don't think there was actually too much writing on this fixture for England, and so Bowen being ruled out doesn't really indicate exactly how injured he is or is not. But he is also another player in a similar price bracket to the likes of Palmer and Mbumo that could increase their ownership. Lewis Hall at Newcastle is ineligible to play against his parent club, and so Livramento is probably nailed on for a start this weekend in Newcastle, but they are playing Chelsea at home. There's actually quite a lot going on in the Newcastle camp at the moment. I think at the start of the international break, Eddie Howe had about 13 of his 25-man squad either flagged or suspended or in and around contention. So we'll just go through the Newcastle updates. So Lewis Hall is ineligible. Wilson looks like he is going to be out for a number of weeks, with Eddie Howe saying he is expecting him back on Boxing Day, so he will be out for a while. Botman, there's conflicting reports about what's exactly going on with Botman, with that knee injury that has kept him sidelined for a lot longer than what it initially looked like. He is still being assessed 2 months later. So the last that I read, he has a probable return date early 2024. So sometime in January, it's looking like he may be back. There's talks that he may still need some sort of surgery, or potentially maybe not. I think there was even some reports that he may have even been out on the grass, so it's very conflicting at the moment. But obviously, if you do have a Botman, or if you have held onto a Botman for this long, I guess you're already well aware of what's going on. But this is mostly only important for Lascelles owners. And if you have Lascelles, I think you just quite easily still play him for a while, because the reports are quite conflicting. You could still even look to purchase a Lascelles as well. Tonali is banned for 10 months. A bit of a hospital pass from his old club there. I do not even know that they let Newcastle... Jeez, get my words out. I do not necessarily know that the old club actually even let Newcastle know that he was going to be banned for 10 months in relation to some betting allegations. But he is expected to return in August of 2024, and so he is just completely out for the rest of the season for Newcastle. Bruno Guimaraes is returning from suspension this game week. He is also part of the reason why Newcastle didn't look amazing in the Bournemouth fixture last week. Isak has been spotted back on the grass and is in line for a return to the Newcastle squad. Almiron has also been out for a couple of weeks with a grade 1 strain, but it is looking like he'll be back this week as well, or could be back for game week 13. Fabian Schär has also made good progress across the international break and also could be back in line for the Chelsea fixture. And so the team that does come out for game week 13 should be quite different to the team that looked like they were struggling in that Bournemouth fixture and did indeed lose that fixture 2-0. And so Newcastle looks set to be back to a much stronger squad. Nkunku is actually telling his manager that he wants to play the Newcastle fixture this weekend, but it is looking like that he will be eased back in. He will not be rushed back as he is recovering from, I believe, a meniscus injury, which did require surgery. Now, I have had a similar surgery on my knee, and coming back from that is no easy feat. So he will, well, he sounds like he is back fit and ready, but he will be eased back into the squad, which is quite good because, well, Chelsea's fixtures do turn for the better after a couple of weeks. Like I just mentioned, Newcastle away this week, Brighton at home in game week 14, and then Manchester United away before a great sea of green for Chelsea. Now, I do not think this will impact too many people apart from probably Nicholas Jackson. My guess is Nkunku will probably be coming in to play up front instead of Nicholas Jackson, but that is just my guess. Other content creators are thinking that it could even impact Palmer to a certain degree, which I do not think is going to be the case at all. I think Palmer is Chelsea's best attacker at the current point in time, and I do not think that Palmer will be impacted at all with Nkunku coming back, but he did look pretty promising, especially pre-season. He looked like he was going to make a few of the squads out there, and I am quite excited to see what in fact Nkunku is all about, because Chelsea are actually managing to generate quite a bit of attack. The only reason they haven't been scoring too much is because a lot of that attack has been falling at the feet of Nicholas Jackson. And so that's a bit of a roundup of everything that is going on at the moment. So couple of key takeaway points there is Wilson is out, meaning that Isak looks like he is probably going to be nailed on up front for Newcastle and on penalties. And we will go into a little bit of analysis over the last 5 fixtures for the key teams in the league, and Newcastle have been generating quite a lot of attack of late, and if all that attack is going to fall at Isak's feet, he is high up my list in terms of people to replace Ollie Watkins for in a couple of game weeks' time. And Nkunku is probably the other one that I will be keeping a close eye on that could potentially make his way into my squad. So, transfer plans moving forward. As I mentioned in my earlier video from the international break last week, my tentative transfer plan this week was to sell Matty Cash and to bring in Gabriel Saliba. Now, I still have not used my wildcard, my first wildcard as of yet. So I'm now planning to dead end my team into game week 18. So game week 18 is when both Brentford and Man City blank. And so I will be dead ending into game week 18, probably selling Haaland in game week 18 and any other City or Brentford assets that I may own at that point. I will be wildcarding in game week 19 to bring Haaland back and to load up on Brentford and City assets as they are going to very likely double in game week 20. Man City's double would include Sheffield United and Brentford. That Sheffield United fixture being at home, and I can't remember if Brentford's actually home or away, but that is an exceptional double for Man City, and so I will be looking to use my triple captainship in game week 20 on Haaland, which is why I am looking to wildcard in game week 19, because you cannot use two chips in exactly the same week. And so I really only have 7 game weeks worth of transfers remaining until I wildcard and refresh my squad in game week 19. I will be looking to go into game week 18 with hopefully 2 free transfers, so that I can get rid of both Haaland and anyone else that I will need to in game week 18 to avoid their blank. Which means that by game, I probably want to be banking a transfer in game week 17, which really only leaves game weeks 13, 14, 15, and 16 for me to really focus my transfers on leading up into this period. In game week 21 as well, AFCON and the Asia Cup start. So that will affect some pretty key players like Son, Salah and Mbeumo, who will all be off to either AFCON or the Asia Cup, which will mean we'll actually have quite a lot of money floating around in our squads at that point, and that will also affect potentially my wildcard in game week 19, as I will have to have a little bit of a plan on exactly how I navigate holding on to either Son and or Salah and then selling them for game week 21. If I had both those players, or even 3 of those players, if I also owned Mbeumo at that time, I would need to get rid of all of them. So that will drastically affect my wildcard at game week 19, but it's a little early to plan for exactly what that wildcard will look like. But that's kind of the extended view of how I am planning to use my wildcard, navigate AFCON, and use the triple captainship in game week 20 if in fact that double does drop in for Man City. So this is my fixture ticker on screen. I have had a chance to tinker around with it across the international break, and I have added a couple of new columns in the data section of this fixture ticker. So now please let me know if you can or cannot read this. Like, I haven't had too much time to actually play around with how it looks, but the last 3 columns here I've got as a slightly smaller font to try and group them together to show that they are all related. Very rushed job. I haven't spent too much time on the design of these 3 columns yet, but we've got last 5, XG for the last 5, and then XGC, expected goals and expected goals conceded, for the last 5 fixtures in these last 3 columns. The last 5 column is actually showing the last 5 game weeks. So there haven't been any double game weeks, so the last 5 game weeks should actually only have 5 fixtures in them. But it's showing wins, draws, losses, and then clean sheets. So Man United, if I order by the last 5, Man United are actually top of the list across the last 5 game weeks with 4 wins, no draws, and 1 loss, with 2 clean sheets across the last 5 game weeks. Second is Liverpool with 3 wins, 2 draws, no losses. Villa third with 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, and so on and so forth. So we can order by this column. And then you have the expected goals that they have mustered across those last 5 game weeks in the second to last column, and then the expected goals conceded for those last 5 game weeks in the last column on screen. Now, the quickest and easiest way I could group those together was to make this font slightly smaller. So let me know if it's too small to read on screen for those of you out there viewing. If so, I will look to upgrade that and make it a little bit different. It's very easy to read in front of me here, but depending on what devices you guys are watching on, might not be as visible. And also, to be fair, YouTube does chuck their videos through a garbage collector. They just, I don't know, they run down the quality of the video coverage on YouTube quite a lot. So I don't know exactly how this will come out, but we will see as of this video. So Aston Villa, currently third when ordered by the last 5 game weeks. 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. But the very key point here is 0 clean sheets in the last 5 game weeks. And as of the entire 12 fixtures that they have played, they've only mustered 2 clean sheets across 12 games. So those of us out there with Matty Cash, or holding on to Matty Cash, has been quite a frustrating hold for a little while now. Now, when I initially jumped on Matty Cash, he was actually playing right wing and came with a hell of a lot of attacking potential. So very similar to like Ben Chilwell in Chelsea very early on, where he was actually playing in that left wing position. Matty Cash was playing right wing. He had, I believe it was Konza in behind him at right back. If I can just find my notes. Probably should have pulled this up a little bit earlier. Bear with me. Where is it? Oh yeah, here we go. So Matty Cash was playing like a right winger or a second striker earlier in the season, which is actually where he generated a lot of his XG. So if you're looking at cumulative XG stats for Matty Cash, it will be getting swayed by those early season performances. In one of my very earlier videos, I actually put Matty Cash down as the second best attacker in the Aston Villa squad, ahead of the likes of Diaby, and that was when he was playing in that right wing spot. So what has changed recently is that McGinn was actually playing on the left-hand side of the pitch, with Matty Cash playing at right mid and Konza playing in behind him at right back. Now, with the injuries and changes that have happened within the Aston Villa squad, we have now seen the introduction of Zaniolo on the left, which has moved McGinn across to that right midfield spot, which is where Matty Cash was playing. Matty Cash has now moved back to a more traditional right back or potentially wing back spot, which has pushed Konza across to centre back. But with most of Villa's attack seemingly being generated down the left-hand side of the pitch, Luca Dean seems to be the man that is getting a lot more further forward, and that is actually pinning Matty Cash back to sitting alongside Konza and Pau Torres, because obviously if Matty Cash then also bombed forward, it would only leave 2 centre-backs who aren't exceptionally quick, but that it would leave 2 centre-backs at the back to deal with any counter-attacks. So Matty Cash, isn't actually even playing as further forward in midfield anymore, nor is he even getting as further forward during the attacks as you would hope that he would in a traditional wing-back role, as a lot of that is actually happening down the left-hand side with Luca Dean, and they aren't keeping clean sheets. So if we just roll this fixture ticker back 5 game weeks, so I've ordered by the last 5, we can see the results on screen of their last 5 matches. They drew 1-1 with Wolves. They beat West Ham 4-1, so they conceded 1 goal in that game. They beat Luton 3-1, so they conceded a goal in that game. They lost to Forest 2-0. So obviously they conceded in that. And then they beat Fulham 3-1. So they have an expected goals conceded of 4.25 across the last 5 game weeks. Excuse me. They have been putting together a lot of attack though. 10.5 goals expected in 5 games at 2 goals a game. That is huge. That is rivaling Man City at 10. Liverpool at 12.25 and Chelsea at 12. So they are currently 4th in terms of attack generated across the last 5 game weeks. But no clean sheets, and Matty Cash isn't really getting involved in the attack. So these are all the reasons why I am, in fact, looking ready to get rid of Matty Cash. We'll move it back to so I've just moved it back to starting at game week 13, ordered by the next 7 game weeks, so that we can have a quick look at the best replacements for Matty Cash. Now, just lost my place because I went off to go and find the other notes. So the immediate options for Matty Cash replacement, top of my list still at this point, if buying this week, is Saliba at Arsenal. Arsenal are 11th on my fixture ticker when ordered by the next 7 game weeks. So this is leading up until the point at which I will be wildcarding in game week 19. Brentford away, maybe not an easy clean sheet game, but that's still achievable. Wolves at home, could be a clean sheet there. Luton away should be a clean sheet. Aston Villa away, they probably concede in this game. Brighton at home, I suspect they probably keep a clean sheet in that game too. Liverpool away, super tough, almost certainly concede. And then West Ham at home in game week 19, also a little bit tricky. They could, in fact, concede in that game as well. Saliba is nailed on. This is a very heavy fixture congestion period. All the top teams, any team in Europe, has a game every 3 days, or midweek games, right up until January. So right out for the next, 8 or 9 game weeks, there is basically midweek fixtures every single week. So we are aiming to bring in the nailed on assets with very little threat of rotation. This is why I was looking to outlay money for Saliba instead of going for someone like Gabriel, who does come with a little bit of a rotation risk. Second on my list is probably someone like Fabian Schär if buying this week, although we aren't entirely certain that he is definitely back for this game week. We will probably need to hear from the press conferences later in the week. But Newcastle are currently sitting second on my fixture ticker when ordered by the fixture difficulty leading up until game week 19. Chelsea at home this week is not an ideal fixture to be bringing in a Newcastle defender. But then the next set of fixtures is pretty good. Manchester United at home. Now, if we just bring up, say, the last 5 game weeks where Manchester United were actually top in terms of form, and just jump back a bit, they've only managed an XG of 6.25 across these 5 fixtures. So about a goal a game, and in one game they were expected to score 2 goals. But they've played Brentford at home, Sheffield United away, okay, tough game at home to Man City, but then Fulham away and Luton at home. I mean, these are very easy games apart from the Man City fixture, and they've only managed to muster half of the XG as someone like Liverpool across the last 5 game weeks. So I've been talking about Manchester United for a while and that they haven't actually been performing too well. Managing only 6 XG against that set of opponents makes me think that Newcastle, being one of the best defensive teams around, up there with Arsenal, Liverpool and City, that Manchester United fixture isn't actually too bad for them, even though it may look a little bit tough on paper. I know a lot of fixture tickers out there still have Manchester United down as a red fixture. I have them down as more of a beige, middle-of-the-road team at the moment. Everton in game week 15 away for Newcastle, pretty decent. Tottenham away in game week 16 is about their only tough fixture. If you are, apart from Chelsea, if you are looking to buy this week to get rid of cash. But then Fulham at home, Luton away, and Forest at home, leading out until game week 19. That is a pretty good run of defensive fixtures on the whole for Newcastle. So Fabian Schär or Lascelles, two players right up the list. Now, of course, if you can stretch to Trippier, he should also be in the mixer, but as a straight-up replacement for Matty Cash, I understand that that is not as easily achievable for most people. Next on the list of options is probably someone like Porro at Spurs. Their run of fixtures is not great, though. They're at home to Aston Villa. Aston Villa will generate a lot of attack. They're then away to Man City, home to West Ham, sort of a bit of a middle-of-the-road fixture, then at home to Newcastle, and then their fixture run gets a little bit nicer past that point. Forest away, Everton at home, Brighton away. But the thing with Porro is he looks to be on all the set pieces without Maddison in the squad. But having City and Newcastle in the next 4 fixtures is not ideal from a defensive point of view. So not a great replacement there, but definitely one to think about. And then the final player that I would probably be looking at for a like-for-like replacement is probably Van Dijk at Liverpool. However, Liverpool do actually play Man City this week away, which is not the best game week to be bringing in a Van Dijk. But across the remaining run of fixtures, it is quite nice from a defensive point of view. Fulham at home in 14, Sheffield United away in 15, Palace away in 16, who have been struggling to score, although they do have Eze back now. And then Manchester United at home in 17. They do have to play Arsenal at home in game week 18, which is again not ideal, but that is quite far in the future. And then Burnley away in game week 19. So Van Dijk, about as nailed on as it gets, is getting up for all the free kicks, corners, set pieces and whatnot, and so you could get some sort of attacking return out of him. But those are probably the top players from the defense that I can see as a like-for-like price point replacement for someone like Matty Cash. And to be honest, it isn't really amazing pickings. I mean, there's no standout run of fixtures. There's no one there with great attacking threat that is also nailed on. It doesn't look actually that amazing. And so I've kind of spent the time over the international break thinking about alternative options. And I think I'm going to swerve Saliba in a plan that involves bringing in both Mbeumo in game week 14 for Martinelli. So a downgrade of Martinelli to Mbeumo. That allows me to field Martinelli against Brentford away this week. And then to upgrade Matty Cash in the same game week next week, all the way up to Trippier. Now, that would give me a backline of Guéhi, Trippier and Lascelles. So I would be doubled up on the Newcastle defence from next week, which would be United, Everton, Tottenham, Fulham, Luton, Forest. And they look to have about the best run of fixtures coming forward, and we all know exactly how involved Trippier is in the attack on all set pieces, does get forward, especially against those easier opposition. And most managers out there aren't actually able to fit Trippier into their squad alongside Salah, Haaland, Son, Watkins and Saka. So the fact that I've got Lascelles and Palmer in my squad at the moment with a downgrade of Martinelli to Mbeumo does allow me to bring in an asset that I definitely want to bring in for the 4 fixtures that Brentford have starting at game week 14. So Brentford, just to recap, they play Arsenal at home this week, which is a pretty hard fixture for Mbeumo, but he is on penalties and they do counter quite well. But then he's got Luton at home, Brighton away, who haven't still kept a clean sheet all season, I believe. Sheffield United away, and then Aston Villa at home. All of these teams defensively can be got at, and so bringing Mbeumo in game week 14 on pens, nailed on, even though he does blank in game week 18, I do have that wild card up my sleeve, and so I will be looking to dead end by selling Mbeumo in game week 18 to probably not buy him back on the wild card in game week 19, because he will be off to AFCON 2 weeks later in game week 21, although Mbeumo does have 2 nice fixtures in game week 19 and 20 of Wolves at home and Palace away. And if he is still around in game week 21, because it is a little bit up in the air on exactly when players are being called up to the AFCON and Asia Cup, he might even get that Nottingham Forest fixture in game week 21. But obviously that's more of a wildcard discussion. I'm really only focusing on these 4 fixtures from game weeks 14 through to 17. So I think Mbeumo is a big upgrade on Martinelli. So downgrading Martinelli next week, giving him this fixture away to Brentford this week seems like a good play. It does mean that I will have to play Cash away to Tottenham this week, but given there aren't really a hell of a lot of defensive options, as I've just gone through them all, there's not a whole bunch of real standout options, and so punting on a Cash, hopefully getting an attacking return in this fixture, in which I'm almost certain they will concede, just to get Trippier next week for their very good run of fixtures over the long term, seems like a pretty good play. Now, the issues, or not the issues, but the things that I will have to dodge with this is I only have 0.1 million in the bank if I made both those transfers right now. So if I just take Martinelli out and go for Mbeumo, add player, and then get rid of Matty Cash and bring in Trippier, I've currently got, that would leave me 0.1 million in the bank. So I do have a little bit of breathing space here. However, Cash is 100% through a price drop, currently at 5.2 million, and is likely to drop to 5.1 million either today or maybe, or not today because it's already passed, maybe tomorrow, maybe even before the deadline. Now I can absorb one price drop in Matty Cash because I bought him in for 4.9 million. A drop to 5.1 million actually means I still have exactly the same sale price at 5 million, so that will not affect the ability to purchase both Trippier and Mbeumo next week. Mbeumo, though, is 68% through a price rise at the time of recording, so he, although he won't probably go up in value this week, he could go up in value early next week. Martinelli is 7% through a price rise, so he is basically not going to change in price for me, so I don't really have to worry about him at all. So I do have a little bit of time for both the midfielders that I am looking to A, sell, and B, purchase. I don't have to worry about that too much. However, Trippier could also be on the rise as well, as he is 72% through a price rise, and although he probably won't go up in value this week, he could in fact go up in value early next week. Now next week there are midweek fixtures, and so ideally I do not want to be making any early transfers in the game week, but I may have to do so in order to catch price rises. Well, if both Cash drops again and or Trippier goes up in price or Mbeumo goes up in price, that would actually price me out of the move, and so I may need to take a bit of a risk on that next week. Now, I could make those transfers this week by taking a hit. I did very briefly have a look at this, but that means I would be selling Martinelli for a pretty good fixture away to Brentford. I would be dodging Cash's bad fixture away to Tottenham, but I would be buying into Trippier at home to Chelsea. The -4 this week, just to lock these players into my squad with the price changes in mind, doesn't seem like the smartest play, and so what I am looking at doing is rolling this week. I'm probably not going to be going for Saliba. I think I'm going to be going for Mbeumo and Trippier, but that will mean I may have to buy both players early next week before all the midweek fixtures, which may in fact induce a hit if any of my players that I am buying, either, Trippier would be the only midweek player that I would be buying that has a midweek game. If he gets injured in midweek, they've got a really tough fixture as well. It might be PSG or someone like that in the Champions League. So Trippier will have a tough game midweek, which means I could buy him and he could get injured. Or any of my other players that are playing midweek, Saka, Salah, Son, Haaland. I mean, I've got quite a few floating around. They could all get injured next week in their midweek fixtures, which would enforce a hit next week as well if I do have to go early in the week in order to catch price rises. But that is a gamble I am probably willing to take, granted that I am buying two very key assets in both Mbeumo and Trippier. So that is my transfer plans for the team moving forward. I'm going to be rolling this week. I'm going to skip the Saliba move and look to focus on Trippier and Mbeumo next week. And so that only leaves captaincy for game week 13. Now, I am aware that this video is getting a little bit long. We're already at 42 minutes, so we'll try and rush through this as quickly as possible. Captaincy is completely up in the air. Haaland and Salah play each other this weekend, so both have a very tough game in front of them. However, we did just see Chelsea put 4 goals past City, so there is no reason at all that Liverpool cannot do that this weekend as well, which does put Salah in the mixer for captaincy shout this week. City, though, did also put 4 goals past Chelsea last week too. Chelsea have a pretty good defence. However, in terms of expected stats, Liverpool's defence has been putting up some slightly better expected goals conceded across the last 5 game weeks. So it will be a slightly tougher game for Man City, but 4 goals against Chelsea is pretty good going, where Haaland was involved in 3 of those returns. And so Haaland is very high up the list in terms of captaincy options this week. However, I'm not entirely sure what backline is actually going to line up at Liverpool here. If Gomez is back, so if you weren't aware, Gomez was out injured last week, which is why Tsimikas got the run out. I think Gomez is actually a better man-for-man defensive asset, and if he is in fact back fit and ready, I think Klopp will probably play him over Tsimikas. However, if Gomez isn't back fit and ready, Tsimikas will have to play this match. I suspect that he will probably end up giving away a lot of fouls and giving up possession quite often unnecessarily to Man City, which is not something that you probably want to be doing. So Haaland could in fact run over the defensive backline if they are not shaping up with their best defensive units. Son is quite close up the list as well. He's probably the next closest front runner, and I did chuck the bus captaincy on him at the start of the international break. However, the problems with Son is without Maddison in the team last week, Højbjerg was the man that Postecoglou actually put out on the pitch as Maddison's replacement, who is a defensive-minded player, and it did show in that Spurs fixture. But Bissouma is currently suspended until the 3rd of December, which means we'll probably see the two defensive midfielders being Sarr and Højbjerg. And who is actually going to be the third midfielder is anyone's guess with Bissouma currently suspended. So Lo Celso was actually given about 15 minutes at the end of the match last week against Wolves, and he is a much more forward-thinking player, but given he's actually been out for so long, I doubt he'll be starting the fixture this weekend. Bentancur has had 2 appearances off the bench in the past 2 game weeks, both at around 30 minutes. I think it was like 27 and 29 minutes. And so my money is actually on him starting. However, he has actually been out for quite a while, so we could also see someone like Oliver Skip starting the match, who is actually another defensive-minded player. Postecoglou might actually roll out that 4-3-3 that he went with last week, as opposed to the 4-2-3-1 that Spurs have been playing with Maddison in the squad. That has afforded the Spurs team quite a lot of attack. So that means that the attacking creativity in the Spurs lineup, we can bank on Kulusevski, Johnson, Porro and Udogie as the ones that will be generating attack for Son, with an outside chance of Bentancur potentially being in the mix, playing in that cam role, which is actually quite a lot of attacking potential, all things considered, and I am still thinking that that might actually be enough to gamble on a Son captaincy instead of going with Haaland, who has a very tough game on paper at home to Liverpool. Now, I could also make a case for Saka or even Cole Palmer to receive the armband this weekend too. Like I said, captaincy is completely up in the air this week, but I think my 2 front runners are both Haaland and Son. And with Aston Villa typically playing quite a higher line than most Premier League teams, that will actually play into Son's hands and suit him quite well. So I am actually leaning towards gambling on an alternative captain, going with Son, even though Maddison isn't in the squad. Now this one is actually going to come down to the wire, and I'll probably end up making that decision quite late in the week, but at the moment I think I'm going to go Son captain with a Haaland vice captaincy and hope that Van Dijk and Kanate or Matip, whoever is playing, manage to man-mark Haaland out of the match. So that's it for today's video. Bit of a long one. Hopefully you stuck with me through it. There was quite a lot to get through. Hopefully I didn't waffle too much, but if you did enjoy this video and got something out of it, press the like button and consider subscribing. And if not, that's alright too. I appreciate you watching. And until next time, cheers.